Okay, so again, turn in your outline. Your test is Tuesday, 4 short answers. A constructive response. Probably a better way to describe it. Think a paragraph, good big paragraph for each question. They're on Canvas. This is the one. Analyze one economic, one political, one artistic transformation of the European Renaissance. Ballpark time period, we're looking at 1400 to about 1650. What's your question?
What's the plan for the other two?
We're going to finish the present.
No,
Hey.
I mean like me.
What do you mean?
Like what are we doing for the
Of next week, after taking the test, prepping for the final.
Okay.
So you still have a comprehensive final exam. So notebook, question, top, lecture, everybody ready?
I didn't say about all your stuff. I did.
No, not gonna follow me when I move over here.
I know, but I gotta teach. Goodbye.
Okay, whatever. So, Canvas, calendar, you guys
So
are used to
notebook,
this, right?
question,
What are the political,
top.
economic, artistic transformations that occurred in Europe during the Renaissance, 1400, 1650? Political, economic, artistic, architectural, intellectual. Lots of things can kind of fit under that artistic category, I guess. Transformations that are going on during the time period. We've done the Mongols, so you have those questions as well. But this is where we're focusing. Let me back up. Okay, so the Latin West,
whatever.
really, we're starting in
So
the late medieval period. So we're coming
Canvas,
out of the Dark Ages. We're wrapping up the
calendar,
Dark
you guys are
Ages,
used to this, right?
and we're
What are the
beginning
political, economic, artistic transformations that occurred in Europe during
the Renaissance, the
1400,
rebirth in
1650.
civilization.
Political,
Late Middle
economic,
Ages, it is a time
artistic,
of
architectural,
unusual
intellectual.
progress. So
Lots
it's the
of
complete
things that
opposite of
fit
the
under
Dark
that
Ages.
artistic
Instead of the
category, I
population
guess.
being illiterate,
Transformations
uneducated,
that are going on
dying of
during
the
the
bubonic
time
plague,
period.
living in filth,
We've done the
no
Mongols, so
art,
you
no
have those
architecture,
questions
no
as well.
science, no philosophy,
This is where we're
um,
focusing.
feudalistic government. We're starting to come out of that. Now, it's not something that happens overnight. It's not like they just flick a switch and all of a sudden civilization is reborn, and Europe's no longer in the Dark Ages. But it's a time period where over time,
Okay, so the Latin West.
art, architecture, literature, invention,
Really, we're starting
business,
in
banking, economics,
um,
government
the late
begins
medieval
to
period.
kind of claw its
Coming
way
out
back,
of the
begins
Dark
to
Ages.
thrive.
Wrapping up the Dark Ages.
The term Renaissance means rebirth.
The Renaissance.
It's a rebirth of civilization in
Late
Europe.
Middle Ages, it is a time of unusual progress.
At the moment, you don't need to worry about these essential questions. We've got our essential question, right?
Illiterate, uneducated,
Economic, political,
dying of the
artistic
bubonic plague,
transformations
filth,
occurring at the time. That's going to be our
no
focus
architecture, no
as
science,
far as your
no
next test here.
philosophy, feudalistic government. We're starting to come out of that. Now, it's
Bubonic
not something
plague,
that
we've
happens
covered that
overnight.
pretty
It's not
good.
like you
I want to
flip a
mention
switch
Dance
and all of a
Macabre a
sudden
little bit more. Did I talk
civilization
about
is
that
reborn.
last unit? Dark
Europe's
Ages,
no
Dance
longer in the Dark
Macabre.
Ages.
So there
But it's a time
is a
period
piece of
where
artwork,
over
artwork
time,
from the late medieval period.
Art,
It kind of looks
architecture,
like
literature, invention,
that illuminated manuscript
business,
I showed you.
banking, economics,
Same kind of
government
colors, primary
begins to
colors, a little bit of shading.
claw its way back,
Not
begins
real
to
life-like,
thrive.
not three-dimensional. You wouldn't
The
recognize the
term
people if they're walking down the
Renaissance
street.
Means rebirth.
Kind of middle school, junior high art
It's a rebirth
kind of
of
level.
civilization.
No
in
Leonardo, no
Europe.
Michelangelo. Pretty sad and depressing with all
At
the
the
bodies
moment, you don't
and
need to worry
the
about these essential
coffins
questions.
being
We've
buried.
got our essential questions,
This is a
right?
better example of Dance Macabre
Economic,
to me. This
political,
is out
artistic
of a
transformations.
Catholic church in Croatia.
As far as your next test here.
Death Dance. They're literally, looks like they're in a conga line. got the king and the
plague, we
queen,
covered that pretty
maybe the
good.
financier.
I mentioned dance macabre a little bit more. Did I talk about
Intermixed
that?
with skeletons.
Dance macabre.
Who
So
are,
there
looks like they're
is
kind of dancing and
artwork
singing, trumpets are
from
blowing,
the late medieval period.
they're kicking up their
Looks like
heels,
that illuminated manuscript.
doing a little conga line
showed
dance
you.
thing. Dance
Same kind of
macabre, very
colors,
Tim Burton,
primary colors,
very
shading, not real
tongue-in-cheek,
lifelike, not
death is so
three-dimensional,
common,
you
but I'm gonna
recognize
kinda
people
laugh at
walking
it
down the
and
street, kind of middle
make
school,
these
junior high art,
awkward
level.
pictures.
No Leonardo, no Michelangelo.
Because if I don't laugh about it, I'm gonna cry about it. It's so sad. We do that with a lot of things, including
This is a better
the
example
Rona
of dance
that I'm
macabre
from.
to me. This is out of a Catholic
skeletons.
church in Croatia.
What does the way the skeletons are
Death
depicted
dance.
kind of
They're
show
literally,
you
it looks like they're
about
in a conga line. Got the
early
king and the
Renaissance or
queen,
late
maybe
Dark
the
Ages
financier,
knowledge of anatomy?
intermixed with skeletons.
Pretty
who
limited.
are- looks
What
like
they
they're
get
kinda
right,
dancing
what
and
they get
singing,
wrong.
trumpets are
What do you think?
blowing,
Point it out.
They're kicking up their heels, doing a little conga line
Okay,
dance.
the ribs.
Dance macabre, very Tim Burton.
There are ribs.
Very.
That's good. So they know there's ribs,
tongue-in-cheek, death
and they
is
know
so
they're
common,
here in the
but I'm gonna
torso
laugh at
somewhere.
it.
Yeah, there's way too many.
Awkward
Just kind of make them,
pictures.
stack them up there,
'Cause
like
if I
piano
laugh
keys. There's
about
some
it,
ribs. We don't know how
cry
many.
about it, It's so sad.
We'll just put them there.
We do that with a lot of things, including.
Okay, the hip bones.
Rona.
Ooh, correct me. They got the femur
Look at the skeletons.
and the
What does the way the
tibula,
skeletons are depicted
tibia. They got the femur and the tibia.
Show you about.
Yeah, there's another
early
one down there too,
Renaissance,
right?
late Dark Ages knowledge of anatomy.
But the whole hip socket and hip joint, what is that called? What are your hip
What
bones?
they get right, what they get
Pelvis.
wrong.
Okay, the pelvic bones. They don't have a clue. And it's not like they haven't seen one before.
Okay.
It's
Ribs.
just, how exactly does that fit in there with the
There
other
are
bones?
ribs.
And how do you
That's
draw
good.
that in,
So they know
in
there's
3
ribs,
dimensions?
and they know
With the
they're
empty
near the
void in the
torso
middle and the
somewhere.
sockets and all the other joints. How do you do that?
there's
It's super
way too
complicated.
many.
So we'll just put 2
Just kind
triangles.
of make them.
Call it good.
Stack them up there, like piano keys.
What
There's
else?
some ribs. We don't know how many.
There's no kneecap.
Just put them there.
Okay, no kneecaps.
Okay, the
Um,
hip bones.
Look at the feet.
Correct me. They got the femur.
Just like these
And the
long toe bones. That's not how that works.
Tibia. We got the femur and the tibia.
Skull looks.
Yeah, there's another one down
Not
there
right.
too, right?
Look at the neck
But the
bone.
whole hip socket.
Or
and
neck bones. There's 2 of them. They're solid
hip joint-
tubes, is what it
what's
looks
that
like.
called? Hip bone.
The vertebrae.
Pelvis. Okay, the pelvic bones.
So they don't know how to draw. They either don't
They
know
don't
how to
clue.
draw the vertebrae, or they don't know
But
how
it's
the
not like they
vertebrae
haven't seen one
interconnect
before.
in order to make a
It's
spinal
just, how
column.
exactly does that fit in there with the other bones?
So this shows me 2
And how
things,
do you
other than the
draw
whole
that
dance
in
macabre,
3 dimensions?
death dance.
With the empty
big
void
sad,
in the middle,
let's
and
make a
sockets
joke
and all the
kind of
other
thing.
joints. How do you do that? It's super
But it shows you that
So
they're
we'll just
aware
put
of
2 triangles.
skeletons and,
Call it
and
good.
bones, but they don't
What else?
really have a scientific exact understanding of how they
Okay,
go
no
together and how they
kneecaps.
work with one another.
Um,
Imagine
Look at
if
the
it were
feet.
middle school art and I took like a box full
like
of
these
bones and threw them on the floor and said,
long
okay,
toe
paint me a
bones.
skeleton.
That's not how that
Students would like line them up kinda, and hips and spinal
Skull
column
looks
and fingers
not right.
and
works. Look at the
Not
neck
good.
bone.
cool.
Or neck bone. There's
Coming
2 of them.
into
They're
the
solid
Renaissance.
tubes is what it looks like.
Coming
The
out of the
vertebrae.
Renaissance is a better way to say it, I
So
guess.
they don't know how to draw. They either don't
You're
know
gonna
how to
have
draw the vertebrae, or they
3D
don't know how the vertebrae interconnect. in order to
Drawings
make
and
a
sketches
spine.
based on actual dissections of human beings
shows me
that
2
are
things,
so
other than the
accurate
whole
they
dance
could be
macabre,
out of your biology
death
textbook.
dance, big
Take
sad,
Da
let's
Vinci's
make a joke kind of thing.
diagrams and sketches
But it
of
shows you
things
that
like the
they're
fetus in the
aware of
womb
skeletons
and put it in
and
your biology
bones,
textbook.
but they
and it
don't-
would fit
they don't
even in a
really have
2020
scientific
context.
exact
That's a
understanding
big
of how
leap
they go
from the
together.
skeleton with the triangle hip bones.
Imagine
That's
if
where we're
middle
going.
school art
That's rebirth of
was like a
civilization.
box full of bones and threw 'em on
Really
the floor
coming
and
out
said,
of the
"Okay,
Dark
it's a
Ages.
skeleton."
Okay, so this slide, it's cut off there and I don't want to walk back, but it's titled Rural Development. Rural. R-U-R-A-L. Rural. What does rural mean?
Cool. Coming into the Renaissance, coming
Okay,
out
country,
of the Renaissance,
not
is a better
city.
way to say it, I guess.
So what
gonna
is the
have
development like
3D
out in the country?
Drawings
Out in the
and
rural
sketches
areas.
based on actual
They're
dissections
starting
of
to
human beings,
go through an
and they're
early
so
agricultural
accurate, they can be out
revolution.
of
The
your
word
biology.
revolution, what does that mean?
Take Da Vinci's diagrams and sketches
change.
of things like the
Usually
food,
a big drastic
put it in
change.
your biology textbook.
Revolution sometimes is thought of
And
as
it
like a
fits
360,
even in
kind of something moving around something.
That's a big
One full
leap from
revolution is
skeleton
literally
to triangle.
360 degrees. So a revolution
That's
is a
what we're
drastic
That's
change.
rebirth of
An
civilization.
agricultural revolution is a drastic
Really
change in
coming out of the
agriculture.
dark
An
ages.
industrial revolution is a
Okay, so
drastic
this slide
change
is
in
cut off there, and I don't
industry or
walk
how we
back.
make
It's
things.
titled Rural
An American
Development.
Revolution is a drastic
Rural.
change in America's political system. The French Revolution, same thing for France. Scientific Revolution, drastic change in science. The microchip revolution, all these
Okay,
are drastic
country, not
changes.
city.
So the agricultural
So
revolution is a
what
fairly
is the
drastic
development like
change
out in the country?
farming, in
in the
agriculture.
rural
Some of the
areas.
things that are occurring
They're
are
starting
here.
to
They include
go through
climate
an
change.
early
So
agricultural
coming out of the
revolution.
Dark
The word
Ages, Europe is
revolution, what does
leaving
that
what's
mean?
called the Little Ice Age. It was a
Change.
time period
Usually a
in the
big
darkest
drastic
parts of the Dark
change.
Age
Revolution,
where
sometimes
global
it's thought of
temperatures
as
have
like a
declined.
360,
Now,
something moving around
don't have the
something.
perception that
One
Europe's
full revolution
frozen
is
for like
literally
50 years.
360
It's not a
degrees.
literal
So a
ice
revolution
age,
is a
it's just a
drastic
little ice
change.
age. Longer
An
winters,
agricultural revolution is a
they begin
drastic
earlier,
change
they
in
last
agriculture.
longer, and they're
Industrial
harsher.
revolution is a drastic
So
change
crop
in
yields suffer
industry or how
for
we make
multiple
things.
generations.
An American Revolution is a drastic
In the
change
Renaissance, temperatures are on the
America's political
rise.
system. The French
Winter
Revolution,
has
same thing
shrunk
for
in
France.
its duration
Scientific Revolution, drastic
and is
change in
going through
science.
a
microchip
warming period.
revolution. All
That
these are
obviously
drastic
boosts
changes.
agricultural
The
productivity,
agricultural revolution
especially
is
the
a
further
fairly
north
drastic
you go in
change
Europe.
in farming.
Europeans
in
at the end of the
agriculture.
Dark Ages have
Some of the
also
things that are
reclaimed
occurring
a lot
are here.
of
They include
land
climate
from
change.
swamps
So coming out of
and
the
from
Dark
tidal
Ages,
areas.
Europe
The best
is
example
leaving
of that
what's
is
called
the Dutch.
Little Ice Age.
In
It
Holland,
was a time period.
oh, I don't know. I don't know the number
in
off the
the
top of my head,
darkest
but
parts of the
30% of
Dark
the
Age
country is
where global
below
temperatures
sea
have
level.
declined.
So massive
Now,
amount
don't have the
of
perception
prime,
that Europe's
low-level,
frozen for
fertile
like 50
agricultural
years.
land
It's not a literal
has been
ice
flooded
age,
by
it's
the
just a
ocean,
little ice age.
or by the
Longer
tides, or by
winters,
swampland
they
from
begin
rivers.
earlier, they last longer,
The
and
Dutch
they're
built
harsher.
dikes and
So crop
levees,
yields suffer for
water
multiple
retention
generations.
systems,
In the Renaissance, temperatures
windmills,
were on the rise. Winter
designed to
has shrunk
drain
in its duration.
the water from these low-lying
going through,
swampish areas
a
and make
warming
it
period.
agriculturally
That obviously
productive.
boosts
You've all
agricultural
seen stuff
productivity,
similar to that
especially
in
further
our
north
region,
you go in
very
Europe.
close to home. If you drive
Europeans at the
5
end of the Dark
minutes
Ages
south
have
of
also
Cape,
reclaimed a
go
lot
past
of
the airport,
land from swamps.
airport,
and
you
from
cross a
tidal
body of
areas.
water, the
best
divergent
example of that is
channel,
the Dutch.
big channel of water. It's man-made,
In Holland,
and it's pulling water out of what was a really
30% of the
flat,
country is
marshy area
below
south
sea
of
level.
us.
So
In an
massive
area that
amounts
was at
of
one point
prime,
described as
low-level,
a
fertile
delta.
agricultural land
A river delta is
has
usually
been
where the
flooded by
river
ocean,
hits
or by
the ocean,
tides,
gets real
or by
flat,
swampland
and the
from
river
rivers.
spreads out its fingers,
The
and
Dutch
it's a
built
swampy,
dikes and levees,
marshy area.
um,
Well, that's
water
what the
retention
Mississippi River was like
systems,
20 miles south of us, 10 miles south of us.
windmills,
But we, in the 1800s,
designed
used
to drain
machinery
the water
and,
from these
and
low-lying
man-made
swampish
dikes and
areas
levees and
make it
channels
agriculturally
to
productive.
hold back the
You've all
Mississippi
seen
and
stuff
divert
similar to that in
rainwater
our
and
region.
floodwaters and
Very
whatnot
close to
out
home.
of this
You
area,
drive
and now it's
5
prime
minutes
agricultural
south.
land, super
Go
flat.
past the airport.
Terrain
Airport
changes
is a-
on a dime just south of the airport.
You cross a body of
So
water.
that's just kind of a
divergent
local example
big
of
channel of water.
That draining of
Man-made,
swamps.
and it's pulling
and
water out
land
of
that's
what
not
was
super
a
productive.
really flat, marshy
They're clearing
area
forests,
south of
massive
us.
amounts of deforestation
area
across,
that was
especially Western Europe. They're just chopping down every tree they can find,
A river
using it for
delta is
ships and
usually where
homes
the
and
river
construction.
hits the
Eventually,
ocean. It's real flat.
Europeans will have to turn to
River
a
spreads
new
out its
continent
fingers, and it's
for
a
sources of timber.
marshy area. Well, that's
New
what the
farming
Mississippi
techniques
River was
going on,
like
switching
20
from the
miles south of us,
2-field
10
system
miles
to the
south.
3-field system. So
But
to make a
the
long story
1800s
short,
used
you can't plant the same
machinery
crop
and
on the same chunk of land
made
over
dikes
and
and
over and
levees
over and over and over and over again.
to hold
I
back
can't
the
plant
Mississippi
wheat on my
and
80
divert
acres this year
rainwater,
and next year and the
floodwaters
year
and
after that
whatnot
and the
out
year
of
after
this
that
area.
and the year after
Now it's
that
fine
and the year
for
after that and the year after that. the wheat will
terrain
use
changes
all
on
of the
top,
nutrients
so
in the soil, and eventually you'll turn it into the Dust Bowl. You'll deplete
that draining
the land of
swamps.
its nutrients. So
And
what they're doing in the
land
medieval
is not
period
super
is a
productive.
two-field system where they're planting
Declaring
half their
forests,
land
massive
and they're
amounts of
leaving half of their
deforestation
land
across,
fallow
especially
or
Western Europe. They
empty
just chop it down every
to
tree
be
they can
used as
find,
pasture
using
land
for
so it
ships
can
and
recover.
construction.
The
Eventually,
cattle, the sheep, the goats,
Europeans will have
pigs,
to
whatever
turn
you
to
let out on your
the
pasture, the
continent
manure
for
would
sources
help
of timber.
put nutrients back in the ground.
New farming
Mostly
techniques
just the
going on,
grass
switching
and the
from the
clover would put
two-field
nutrients
system to
in.
three-field
The other half of the
system, so to
land,
make a long
you're growing
story
wheat.
short, you
Or
can't
whatever.
plant the same crop.
And then you would
on the
switch
same chunk
those
of
two
land
halves the
over
next
and
year.
over and over and over
And that
and over and
two-field
over
system
again.
means
I
that how
can't
much of your
plant
land are
wheat
you farming in
on
a
my
given
80
year?
acres this year and next year and the year after that and
Half,
the year after
50%.
that and the year after that and the year after
The
that. and
three-field
the year after that.
system is an
The
attempt
wheat
at what's
will
called crop
use
rotation.
all of the nutrients
You're
in
going
the
to plant
soil,
your
and
land in a
eventually
way
turn it
to
into the
rotate the
Dust Bowl.
crops every year so that
Wheat,
what
the land
I don't know
of
what
its
the wheat
nutrients.
takes out of the
So
ground
what they're doing in the medieval
nutrients-wise,
period
the
is two-field
beets
system
put into the
where they're
ground, and what the
planting half
beets
their
take
land
out of the ground, the
and they're leaving half of their
soybeans are going to
land
put into the ground.
fallow
What the
or
soybeans
empty
take out of the ground, the
to be
wheat is
used
going
as
to put in the
pasture
ground.
land
That's not
so it can
the
recover.
right crops in the right way, but
The
you
cattle,
get the
the
gist.
sheep,
They're going
the
to
goats,
rotate their
pigs,
crops
whatever you let out
every
on
year in a way
pasture,
to try and
the
offset
manure would help,
the
put
deficiency in the
nutrients back in
nutrients
the
from the
ground.
different crops.
Mostly
Now,
just
often
the
they're still
grass and the
leaving
clover would put
a third of
nutrients
the
in.
land
The other
fallow or
half of the
empty
land, you're growing
to
wheat.
recover as pasture
Or
land,
whatever.
but it's
And
still
then
a
you
lot
would
more
switch
productive than
those
just the
two halves the next
50%
year.
of the two-field
And that
system.
two-field system
Today,
means how
you
much of
see
your
almost
land are you
no
farming in a given
agricultural
year.
land go unplanted. If I
Yeah,
got a
50%.
field, I'm going to plant something in it this year,
The
right?
three-field system is an attempt
I'll
at what's
rotate
called
corn and
crop
soybeans
rotation.
and wheat,
You're
you
gonna
know, through
plant
it
your land
annually.
in a way to rotate the crops every year.
So
that what
how come I don't have the soil depletion
the
issues in a
wheat
modern
takes out of the
sense? What do we
ground,
do to offset that?
nutrients-wise, the beets put into the ground, and what the beets take out of the ground, the soy.
What do farmers do that allow them to plant wheat this year, soy
Soybeans take
next
out of
year,
the ground,
corn the
the
next
wheat
year,
is
and just
gonna
do that in a
put it
never-ending
That's not
cycle?
the right crops in the right way, but
They
you just
fertilize it.
rotate their
How is our
crops
fertilizer
every
different
year
than
in a
what
way to try
medieval
and
fertilizers
offset
were?
the deficiency in the nutrients.
You just throw a bunch of cow patties out on the
Now,
field
often
and
they're
hope for the
still
best?
leaving a third of the land fallow or empty.
They're
to
industrial
recover
chemical
pasture land.
fertilizers.
But
So they're
it's still a lot more
artificial
productive
fertilizers
than
with
50%.
massive amounts of nitrogen, usually made from
Today,
petroleum.
you see almost
that are
no
pumped into the
agricultural land
ground.
go unplanted.
Does that make sense? Industrial Revolution, chemical
If I got a
fertilizers,
field, I'm
not
gonna plant something in it this
organic,
year, right?
natural animal
I'll
fertilizers.
rotate corn and soybeans and wheat, through it
Anyway,
annually.
agricultural revolution. Get it? Things are
So
things are more
how come I don't have
productive in
those
rural
soil
areas
issues in a modern
because of
system?
these new techniques and systems, including the horse-drawn plow, steel plow, as opposed to maybe like a cast iron plow. Steel, it's lighter, it's more flexible,
They fertilize.
sharper,
How is our fertilizer?
and can be
different
pulled
than
by a horse.
diesel fertilizers?
faster than maybe an ox. So an ox is big, strong, two ox especially, but kind of slow. A horse can do it faster.
They're industrial
And a
chemical
steel plow is going to be a little lighter than a big cast iron plow. Anyway, all of those things combining. What I really want to spend most of our time looking at is these new sources of mechanical or machine power, like a windmill, like a water wheel, used to grind grain, mill lumber, press olives,
Anyway,
work
agricultural
in
revolution.
tan leather,
Things are more
make paper,
productive in
hammer,
rural areas
hammer
because of
iron,
these
like a
new
blacksmith.
techniques and systems, including the horse-drawn
Windmills
plow.
and water wheels have gone back all the way to Roman times. So the Romans
steel
had
plow,
used these devices, and
as
some of them were
opposed to
pretty
maybe like a
elaborate.
cast iron plow.
But as
Steel
the
is
Renaissance
lighter,
gets
more
going,
flexible,
windmills and water wheels, especially water wheels,
sharper,
become commonplace in
and
every
can be pulled by a
village
horse,
all across Europe,
faster
and they become
than
more
maybe
and more
an ox.
sophisticated and are put to more and more
Big,
tasks.
strong, two
You guys know what a windmill does, right? Catches the wind,
Horse can go faster.
spins an axle, and you can put that to some
And
kind
a
of
steel
mechanical
plow's gonna be a little
function.
lighter than
A water
a
wheel
big
does the
cast
same
iron
thing. Instead of the
plow.
wind, it's the falling
Anyway,
of
all
water,
those things
taking advantage of
combining.
gravity.
What I really want to spend
What's
most
the problem
of our time
with a
looking
windmill?
at is these new sources of mechanical or machine power, like a windmill, like a
100%
water wheel,
dependent on wind. So
used
if the
to
wind
grind
doesn't
grain,
blow, my
mill
windmill doesn't
lumber,
turn.
press
How's a water mill
olives,
better?
work in tan leather, Make paper, hammer.
Okay, there's always running
hammer
water.
iron, like a
Well,
blacksmith.
that's not true, right? Because like sometimes
Windmills
it
and
rains,
water
sometimes
wheels
it doesn't
have gone
rain,
back
and
all the way to
sometimes
Roman
rivers are
times.
real
The Romans had
flowing
used
hard, and
these
sometimes they're
devices, and some
not.
of
So
them were
water
pretty
is
elaborate.
not as unreliable
But
as wind, certainly,
as
but
the
it can be
Renaissance gets
unreliable.
going,
What can I
windmills
do
and
with water
wheels, especially
because it
water
may
wheels,
not
become
always be there that I
commonplace
can't do with
in every
wind?
village all across Europe, and they become more and more
I can
sophisticated and are
stockpile
put to more
water.
and more tasks.
I can make a
Because the way a
dam,
windmill does,
or a
right,
levee,
pushes the wind,
or a reservoir, or just a big giant pond. I can make a storage of water and therefore a storage of energy,
What's the problem
and
with
then
the windmill?
release it when I need it to have it more reliably dole out
100%
that
dependent on
energy.
wind.
So this is
So if
shifting
wind
from
doesn't
being
blow,
almost
my
100%
windmill doesn't
reliant
turn.
on muscle power,
How's
be
the
it
water
human or
bill
animal,
better?
to mechanical power. Non-industrial revolution
Okay,
yet. We're
there's
not using
always running
steam
water.
engines and all that stuff yet, but we're taking advantage of limited technology and mechanical power to grind grain, chop lumber, all that stuff.
So water is not as unreliable
Lumber.
as wind, certainly it can be
So
unreliable.
2x4, right?
What can I
So
do
2x4
with
is cheap. I can go buy a 2x4 for like $2.50 today. It's a square, dimensional.
I can
piece of wood.
stockpile water. I can make
How do I
a
get
dam,
that out of a
or
log?
levee, or a reservoir, or just
Back
a
in this
big
time
giant
period, I guess.
pond. I can make a
Yeah, I got
storage
an
of
axe and I just
water,
keep chopping and
therefore
chopping and
storage
chopping
of
and chopping
energy.
until it's square. With an
And
axe,
then
I'm not going to be able to
release
make it
it
real
when I
square,
need it
right?
to
It's
have
going to
it
kind
more
of look square-ish, but it's not really going to be
So this is
mathematically
shifting
90-degree
from being
angle
almost
square.
100% reliant on muscle
I can
power,
saw
be
it by
human or
hand.
animal,
So
to
what most of the time they're doing, and this
mechanical power.
includes the colonial period of the United
Non-industrial
States, are doing what's called
revolution. We're not
pit
using
sawing.
steam engines and all that
So,
stuff yet, but we're taking advantage of
we're gonna
limited
dig a
technology,
big hole in the ground.
mechanical power,
So
grind
deep
grain,
that I can
chop
get in it.
lumber, all that
So like
stuff.
see these ceiling tiles here?
Lumber.
Picture me down in a pit,
So
underground.
right?
And we're gonna lay this log across that pit. So it's held up on either side and I climb down in the pit.
It's a square dimensional
Somebody's on the top
piece of wood.
holding a saw, big long saw
How do
with
I
two
get
handles.
that out of a
I'm down
log?
on the bottom holding the other end of the saw, and we're just gonna work this giant saw back and forth down the length of the log,
Yeah, I got
and then
axe.
back again.
Chopping and chopping and chopping and chopping.
You do that for 5
An
minutes
axe,
and
I'm
tell
not
me
gonna
it's
be able to
fun.
make it real square, right?
Much less 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours or a week or a month or 35 years or whatever. That's gonna wear you out quick.
I can saw it
Pit saw.
by hand.
A
what
water
most
wheel,
of the time they're doing,
much
this
more
includes
efficient.
the
You don't have to
federal
rely on
United
human
States
power
Air
for that. You
Force
can
pit saw.
use the rotation
So-
of the water wheel
We're gonna
to
dig
mill
a big
up
hole in
lumber
the ground.
much more quickly, much
So
more
deep
affordably.
I can get in it.
Rural
See these
development.
Ceiling tiles here.
Black
Picture
Death
me
kind of
down
puts a
in
dent
it.
in that for a time. 1/3 of Europe's
We're gonna lay
population
this
dies from
log
bubonic plague.
across
We've
that
covered
pit.
that, I think, pretty
So it's
well.
held up on either side, and I climb
The
down
lasting
the pit.
effects of that
Somebody's on the top.
lead to
holding
some
the saw,
changes
big
in
long
that
saw with 2 handles. I'm down on
so
the
many
bottom,
people
holding the other
die,
end of the
become
saw,
so depressed,
and
lose
we're just
faith
gonna
in the
work this
authorities.
giant saw
They lose
back and
faith in the
forth
Catholic
down the
Church.
length.
They lose faith in a lot of the priests and the monks and the nuns and the bishops and the Pope. They lose faith in the king and the nobility and the aristocracy. They lose faith in these leaders that are supposed to know everything and protect them, who clearly were unable to in any way diminish the bubonic plague.
A water wheel. much
So
more
many
efficient.
people
You don't have
die
to rely on human power for that. You can
that there's a shortage
use
of
the
labor.
rotation of the water wheel.
You guys know how supply and demand works, right? So demand is still high. We still need to pit saw lumber, and we still need to grow
Black Death
and
kinda
harvest
puts
grain,
dent in
and we
that
still
for a
need people
time.
to work plows, and they
1/3 of
need more
Europe's
people as
population
ever.
died
Actually,
from
more
bubonic
people,
plague. We've covered that, I think,
because
pretty
we've
well.
got new agricultural land we're pulling
The
in.
lasting effects of
But we don't
that
have as many. So the people that are there, you got to
lead
pay
to some
more.
changes
So
in
their
that
income comes up a little bit. We see that happen
so many
especially in
people die,
England.
become
More
so
importantly,
depressed,
their
lose
status
faith in the
improves. They move
authorities.
from serfs to
They lose
peasants
faith in the Catholic
in
Church.
most
They
of
lose
Europe.
faith in a lot of the
All right, so
priests,
socially
the monks,
speaking, lowest rank is a
and the
slave.
nuns, the bishops, and the Pope.
Next rank is a
They lose
serf.
faith in the king and the nobility.
Highest rank
and
of
the
poor people that work
aristocracy.
really,
They
really
lose
hard
faith
is peasant.
in these leaders that are supposed to know everything. and
Slave is
protect
outright
them,
property.
who
Treated
clearly were
horribly,
unable to
worked to
in
death,
any way
and
diminish
owned
the
as
bubonic
property.
plague.
A serf,
So many people
treated
die
horribly, works all the
that
darn
there's a
time,
shortage of labor.
but not property
Is how
themselves.
supply and demand works, right?
But they
So
are tied to
demand
the
is still
land.
high. We still need to
So they're
pit saw
part
lumber,
of
and we still need to grow
Duchy of
harvest
Normandy.
grain, and we still need people to
They're
work
not
plows.
free
They
to
need
go
more
wherever
people
they
as ever,
want,
actually
do
more
whatever they
people,
want, however they want.
Because we've got new
They're not
agricultural
free,
land we're pulling in.
but they're not slaves.
But we don't have as
They're
many.
tied
So
to the
people
land.
that are there,
They're
you gotta pay
required
more.
to give a
So
certain
their
percentage of
income
their
comes
labor
up a
to
little
their
bit. We see
lord.
that happen especially in
But
England.
because
More importantly, their
there's such a
status
shortage of
improves. They move
manpower
from
after the
serfs
Dark
to
Ages,
peasants
we
in
see a lot of
most
serfs
Europe.
upgrade their status
So
to
socially
peasants.
speaking, lowest
They're
rank
now
is a
able to
slave.
get out of town. Many
Next
of them
rank
just
is
run
a
away
serf.
and leave,
Highest rank
and they
is
go to a
people
different
who work
place.
Really, really hard. is
and they
peasants.
become peasants. They're still working really
Slaves outright
hard.
property.
They've got slightly
Treated
better
horribly,
wages,
worked to death,
but they're no longer
and
tied to
owned
the
as
land.
property.
If they want to move to the city,
A
or they want to
serf
move to a different country,
treated
or they want to move to a
horribly,
different
works all the darn
economic
time,
opportunity in a rural area,
but not
they're
property
free to do
themselves.
so. That's a big change coming
But they are
out
tied
of
to the land.
the bubonic plague, or at least
So they're
partly
part
out of the
of
bubonic plague.
The Duchy of Normandy.
Cool.
They're not free to go wherever they want, do whatever they want, however they want. They're not free.
I'm going to show you how
but
some of
they're
these
not
water
slaves.
mills work.
They're tied to the land.
Windmill.
They're required to give a certain percentage.
Okay,
of
so
their
here's a
labor to
water-powered sawmill. I'm just going to walk you through
Because
it.
there's such a shortage of manpower after the Dark Ages, we see a lot of serfs.
So you can
upgrade
see
their
them
status to
storing up
peasants. They're now
water,
able to get out of
logs
town.
would be floated
and
down the
run away
river.
and leave. And they go to a different
Water
place.
would be released,
And they
fall in the
become
buckets,
peasants.
spin
They're
the
still
water wheel.
working
Look how
really
fast that
hard.
one's going.
They've got slightly better
And then that would be
wages,
turned
but
into
they're no
mechanical
longer tied to
power
the land. If they want to move to the
via
city,
gears and
they want to
cogs
move
and
to a different
belts
country,
and
or they want to move to a different
all those
economic opportunity in the rural area, they're
apparatus.
free to do so. It's a big change.
See the saw blades? There's a log laying on that sled, and there's a saw blade that's moving up and down, being powered by the water mill. The log is what's
so
actually
here's a
moving. So the
water-powered
saw blade,
sawmill
yes,
and-
it's obviously moving up and down, but it's not moving forward. It's stationary. The log is being slid
So you can see them storing
maybe half an
up
inch at a time forward.
water.
Yeah, the whole building
Logs
shakes, I
would be
bet.
floated down
But that's
the
a whole
river.
lot better than me standing on top of it, you standing at the
Water
bottom
would
of
be
it,
released.
and pushing that
fall in the
big
buckets,
saw back
spin
and
the
forth,
water
back
wheel,
and
how
forth, back
fast
and
that was
forth.
going. And then that would be turned into mechanical power via gears and cogs and belts.
Mill, the word mill infers kind of a grain mill. So these are what are called millstones. Sometimes you'll see these out on rural properties. You know how people put like wagon wheels, like the entrance to driveways and stuff like that. Sometimes people will display their
Saw blades,
millstones.
There's a log laying on that sled, and there's a saw blade.
Usually it's
that's
round
moving up and down, being powered by
Granite
the
stone,
water
often
mill.
granite, that's got
The
grooves
log
marked
is
in
what's
it,
actually
kind
moving.
of
So the
carved
saw
into
blade,
it.
yes, it's
And that
obviously
bottom
moving
stone
up
will be
and down, but it's
stationary.
not moving forward.
And then the
It's
top stone
stationary. The log
would
is
be on
being
top of it
slid
and would be spinning
maybe
by the
half an
water
inch at a
wheel or the
time
windmill.
forward. Yeah, the whole building
Grain would
shakes,
fall
but
through the center
that's
hole,
a whole lot
work its
better
way
than
in
me
between the
standing
two
on top of it,
slabs,
you
and then the
stand on the
spinning
bottom of it,
slab on top
pushing that big
would
saw
grind the
back
grain
and
into
forth,
a
back and
flour.
forth, back and forth.
You guys have all seen in movies Native American ways of making like cornmeal, which is basically big flat rock,
Mill, the
handful
word
of
mill
corn,
infers
another rock,
kind of a grain
grind
mill.
them by hand.
So these are what are called
So that's how you would
millstones.
make flour or cornmeal prior
Sometimes you'll see
to
these out on rural properties. You know how people put like
a stone, a millstone. So here's another water wheel. I'll just narrate through it. This one is grinding cornmeal out of corn.
Usually it's round, granite stone. It's got grooves marked in it, carved into it. And that bottom stone is stationary. And the top stone would be on top of it.
So,
It would be
small
spinning
stream.
by the water wheel.
You can see a little dam there, an artificial
Rain
dam,
would
kind
fall
of
through the
diverting
center
some of the
hole,
water
work its way in between the two slabs,
down a
and then
side
spinning slab
dike,
on top,
side channel,
grind the grain into a
diversion. There's
flour.
another
I guess we'll see
another
in movies, Native American
little dam
ways of
there.
making, like, cornmeal, which is
He's
basically
turning
flat
that
rock,
screw, which I assume is
handful of corn,
opening
another rock, grind them
a water inlet to let the water in, or could close it if too much water's coming. And that would release the water into
So
a
here's another water
canal
wheel. I'll just narrate through it.
or a
This
lake
one
or a
is
reservoir or
grinding
whatever. They would stockpile it, store up that energy there. It could then be released as needed, in the quantity needed. So he's using a lever there to try and raise this wooden door that lets the water flow downhill using gravity. The sheer weight of the water falls into the buckets from the wheel and spins this massive thing.
Dam kind of diverting some of the water.
Again, it's moving pretty fast. You can see how thick the axle is, the size of a big tree trunk.
There's another
rotating.
Little dam there.
This is more traditional, more typical of medieval Europe.
Which I assume is opening.
The Renaissance, complicated gears and cogs,
water inlet,
rotating and turning to try and transfer that motion into something usable. This guy's on the second floor feeding corn down into a hopper.
Or a lake or a reservoir, whatever. They would stockpile it,
so those
store up
corn
that energy
kernels
there. It could then be released
are
as needed.
slowly going to be released.
So using a lever there to try and raise
down into the hole in between the millstones.
The water flow down.
You can see the corn falling there.
The sheer
it would find its way in between the two stones.
Into the buckets of the wheel.
The top stone is spinning and grinding the corn into cornmeal in between the two stones.
You can see how thick the axle is, the size of the big tree trunk.
This is pretty sophisticated engineering and mechanics.
This is more traditional, more typical of medieval Europe. The Renaissance, complicated gears and cogs.
Much better than grinding by hand. Every village, every town would have its mill, its lumber mill, its...
This guy's on the second floor.
It's different resources.
Down into a hopper.
Skip that for now. Let's take a break.
So those corn kernels,
bathroom, stretch your legs, get a drink, whatever you got to do.
Slowly going to be released.
Let's take a break for a minute.
Down into the hole in between the millstones. You can see the corn falling there. It would find its way in between the two stones. The top stone is spinning and grinding the corn into cornmeal in between the two stones. This is pretty sophisticated engineering and mechanics. Much better than grinding by hand. Every village, every town would have its mill, its lumber mill, its
Miller here at Union Mill.
It's different resources. Skip that for now. Let's take a break. So, bathroom, stretch your legs, drink, whatever you gotta do. Let's take a break.
You get to be right up front. Yeah. Onto those phones. Take a break. Rot your brain on screen time. Squad goals. Sus time. The sus seems to have passed.
Yeah.
When the middle school kids pick it up, it's no longer cool anymore.
Gotta keep up with Ryan. He left us in the middle of the day.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Another one bites the dust?
So did Nolan.
Nolan had to.
Yeah, I've seen a number of dominoes fall today. Big sad. I shouldn't joke.
On camera, joking about COVID.
Well, how else do you handle it, right? It's awkward, it stinks, it's never going away, it doesn't feel like.
Take a break.
The vaccine.
Smile about it, or
Screen time.
I don't know, ranting wouldn't be helpful, right? With final exams coming up to boot.
Who's all getting that? Who did they say was getting the vaccine like on TV? Is it like Obama or something?
Well, I heard past presidents were going to step up and do it, right? So Bush, Clinton, Obama.
I guess I'll see if they died running.
Yeah.
If they don't, I mean, I'm like,
Yeah, that's what the attempt is to try and demonstrate the safety of the vaccine. I don't know. I ventured to not say a whole lot because I don't know, but
I've seen a number of dominoes.
I have my doubts about how long the vaccine immunity lasts. I read an article the other day, I don't know whether it's accurate or not, said the vaccine lasts for like 3 months. I don't know if that's at least 3 months, but
you have to get like 2 of them.
and you got to get 2 of them. For one of them, there's different versions. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but a 3-month immunity doesn't seem like a real long time to me. Right. I get 4 sets of 2 shots.
I heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Get my
past
8
presidents
shots
are
in the
gonna
course of
start
a year.
So Bush, Clinton, Obama.
I guess I'll see if they died. If
Yeah.
they don't, I mean, I'm like,
Yeah, that's what the attempt is to try and demonstrate the safety of the vaccine. I don't know. I venture to not say a whole lot.
I'm never.
I have my doubts about how long the vaccine.
I can see that.
Okay, let's get back after it. So we're shifting here from
One of them, there's different versions. I don't know.
from rural to urban.
3 months.
And this is really where we're going to see civilization thriving, rebounding, becoming more and more sophisticated. Urban is city. So
2 shots.
the word civilization means city living in the strictest definition. So in order to have civilization rebound, we have to have a resurgence of these large, sophisticated, wealthy cities, and that begins in northern Italy, and that really jumpstarts the Renaissance. The art, the architecture, the science, the cultural shifts. Some historians argue the Crusades played a role in reestablishing trade links between the Middle East
Okay,
and
let's
Europe.
get back after it. So we're shifting
You wouldn't
here
think
from
war and conflict would reestablish trade, but Europeans establishing those Crusader
rural to
states
urban. And this is really
re-exposes Europe
civilization
to the silk, the
thriving,
porcelain,
rebounding, becoming more
the
and more
spices, the
sophisticated.
luxury goods of Asia and the Middle
urban is
East.
city. So
City-states like
word
Venice, like the
civilization
Republic of
means city
Venice, it's the
living
one with all the
in
water
strictest
streets,
definition.
establish
So in order to
trade
have civilization
relationships
rebound, we have
with
to have a
Egypt,
resurgence of these large,
Syria,
sophisticated,
with the Ottoman Turks,
wealthy
and
cities,
start bringing
and that
Chinese
begins
goods over land
in
across the
northern
Silk Road,
Italy,
but also
and that
goods
really
from the Middle
jumpstarts
East and Africa
the
into Europe,
Renaissance.
and they
The
start
art,
making
architecture, the
a
science,
whole lot of money
cultural shifts.
monopolizing
Some historians argue the
European
Crusades played a
trade
role in
access to
reestablishing
Middle
trade
Eastern
links
goods.
between the Middle East.
Italy
and
is
Europe.
not a unified empire
Think
or kingdom
war
or
and
country. It is a
conflict would
bunch of different
reestablish
competitive
trade, but
city-states or
Europeans
republics
establishing
or
those crusader states,
fiefdoms. There's
re-exposes
duchies
Europe
and republics,
to
and there's
the
the papal
silk,
states
the
ruled by the
porcelain,
Pope. There's the kingdom of the two
spices,
Sicilies.
the luxury
There's
goods
all these
of
different
Asia and the Middle
feudal
East.
kingdoms competing with one another,
City-states like
innovating
Venice,
and
the
fighting with
Republic
one
of Venice,
another,
it's the one with all the
and
water
trying to
streets.
maintain
Established
control of the
trade
lucrative
relationships with Egypt,
Middle Eastern spice, silk, porcelain trade.
Syria, with
The best
Ottoman
examples
Turks,
of that are Venice and Genoa.
and start bringing
Venice is the most famous,
Chinese
again with the
goods
water
over
streets.
land across the Silk Road.
Water
but
streets
also
make
goods
sense
from the Middle East
for
and
trading.
Africa into
You
Europe.
can get your ships
They
right
start
up to
making a whole
your
lot of money,
house or
monopolizing
your place of business, load up,
European trade
get out
access
quick.
to
Islands
Eastern
are
goods.
relatively easy to defend.
Italy is not
Having a
a
powerful
unified
navy
empire or
can
kingdom
protect
or country.
your
It's
relatively
a bunch
small
of different
city
competitive
from a
city-states,
large landing
republics,
empire.
or fiefdoms.
So Venice,
There's
Genoa,
duchies
Florence,
and
Rome,
republics, and there's the papal
all
states
take
with
advantage
the Pope,
of
the Kingdom of the Two
their
Sicilies.
connections with the Middle
There's
East
all
at the
these
end of the
different
Silk
feudal-
Road. Also
feudal
during this
kingdoms
time period,
competing
we
with one
have
another,
trade
innovating,
thriving
fighting
in
with
what's
one
called the
another,
Pax
and trying to
Mongolica.
maintain
That's a play on the
control of the
Pax
lucrative
Romana. You guys remember
Middle
learning about
Eastern
that?
Spice, silk,
So what's that
porcelain
one?
trade. The best examples of that are Venice.
Okay, so the Roman
and
peace.
Genoa.
And
Venice is
because of the
most
Roman
famous,
peace,
again,
what?
with the water streets. Water
Okay,
streets
trade
make sense
was kind of
for trade.
peaceful and able to
You can get
thrive
your
from
ships
east
right
and
up
west
to
within the Roman Empire. Other things
house,
spread along trade routes with
place
it,
of business,
like Christianity,
get out
Latin
quick.
and Greek language,
Islands
Roman
are
government, blah, blah, blah.
relatively easy to defend.
So the Mongols,
Having a
same
powerful
thing. They
navy,
conquered far and
navy to
wide,
protect
Kublai Khan all the way in
relatively
Yuan,
small
China,
city from a
the
large
Oghani, the
landing
Middle East, so the
empire.
Mongols control
So
all the way from
Venice,
the Middle East to
Genoa,
China.
Florence,
And
Rome,
after conquering and killing a
all
whole
take
lot of
advantage
people,
of
you then have
their
a Mongol
connections with the Middle
peace.
East at the end of the
You
Silk
have
Road.
stability,
Also during this time
and
period,
trade
we have
can
trade
thrive
thriving in what's called the Pax
amongst that
Italica.
conquest, amongst that peace.
That's a play
And the
on the
Venetians are
Pax
able to
Romana.
reliably get what they need
So what's
that's
that?
traveling along those trade routes. I want to illustrate how this kind of Silk Road system worked real quick.
Okay,
With,
trade was kind of peaceful and able to thrive
Let's
from
call it a
east
pepper
and west
shaker.
within the Roman Empire. Other things spread along trade routes with it, like Christianity, Latin and Greek
All right,
language,
so,
Roman government, blah, blah, blah. So the Mongols, same thing. They conquered far and wide, Kublai Khan all the way in Yuan, China.
peppercorns. All right,
the
so
Oghani,
pepper.
Middle East, so
It's a
Mongols
literal pepper
control all the way
You
from
are
Middle
a
East to
farmer
China.
in the
After
Spice Islands of
conquering and
Indonesia.
killing a whole
You
lot
guys
of
know where
people,
Indonesia is?
You then have a Mongol
Way
peace.
down, right above
You
Australia,
have
tropical
stability
islands.
and
Literally
trade
called the Spice Islands
and
because they got a whole lot of
thrive
spices. Okay, so pepper. You're a farmer,
amongst that conquest, amongst
been
that
working all
peace.
day
And
out in the
Venetians
heat
are able
to produce a thing of
reliably
pepper.
get what they need,
that's what you produced.
that's traveling along those trade
I'm a
routes.
merchant.
I want
Got
to
some skills, I got
illustrate
some
how this
talents, I
Silk
used my
Road
compass
system worked real
and my
quick.
sails to navigate the open ocean, found my way to the Spice Islands. I show up every month to buy your pepper. I'm from China. Okay, I'm from South China. I want to buy that pepper shaker from you.
All
How much
right,
you want to
so,
charge me?
$10.
$10? Okay, deal. So I buy $10 worth of pepper,
All right, so pepper.
and then I fill up my cargo hold with it. So I really buy a whole lot more.
You are a
Because I'm not going
farmer
to travel around the world and
in
pick up
Spice
10 bucks,
Islands
but
in Indonesia.
$10.
So where
All
Indonesia
right,
is.
I'm in China. Okay, from the Spice Islands, I sail to, let's say, India.
Literally called the Spice Islands because they got a lot of spices. Okay? So
Bought it for
pepper.
10.
You're a
I
farmer.
sell it to somebody in India.
Been working all day out in the heat. to produce
Double my
the
money?
pepper.
Sounds good to me,
That's what
right?
you produced.
Okay, so I'm going to double it. 20 bucks.
I'm a merchant.
Person in India
Some
bought it for
skills,
20.
I got some talents. I used my compass.
You're going to turn around and sell it to
and
somebody
my sails to
in
navigate
Iran.
The open ocean. Found my way to Spice Islands.
What do you want for it?
Buy your pepper.
Paid 20.
I'm from
30? Go more.
China.
40? That's it? You don't want to get greedy?
I want to buy that pepper shaker.
Okay, 40. So she'll double her money too. Okay, so what do we do? Indonesia to China, China to
So I
India,
buy
India
$10
to
worth of
Iran.
pepper,
Right? Is that what I
and then I
said?
fill
You
up my
paid
cargo
40,
with it, so I
right?
really buy a lot.
And you're going to sell it to somebody in Iraq. Let's go to Baghdad.
$10.
What do you want to sell it
Right?
for? You paid 40.
Okay, from the Spice Islands. I
85.
sail
Okay,
to,
getting greedy now.
let's say,
85
India.
bucks. Makes it to Baghdad. Let's
it
turn
for
around
10.
and sell it
Sell
to
it to somebody
people
in
in
India.
Syria. What do you want to sell it for? 200? Okay. All right, we're getting greedy now. Jack it up to 200.
20 bucks.
Syria sells it to the Italians.
Person in India
What
bought
are you
it
gonna
for
sell it
20.
for? You bought it for 200.
You can turn around and sell it
250?
to
Not
somebody
greedy.
in
All right, the Italians get a
Iran.
deal. 250 bucks. The Venetians show up on the coast of
Paid
Syria.
20.
They're going to sell it to the French.
30?
They bought it for 250. What are you selling it for?
Make it greedy?
500
Okay,
even.
40, so she'll double her money too.
The French
Okay, so
got some pepper for their
Indonesia
fancy
to China,
French
China
cuisine.
to
Finally,
India to Iran.
cost them 500 bucks.
Right, so
They're
it's
going to
like
sell it to their
paid
cousins in
40,
England.
Right? And you're
How
gonna
much?
Sell it to somebody in Iraq. Let's go to Baghdad.
Okay, that's crazy.
What do you want to sell
$2,000.
it for?
Sold.
Paid 40.
All right, so that pepper shaker, right? That's what we
85.
bought.
Okay, getting greedy
By
now.
the time it
85
makes its
bucks.
way to France was
Baghdad.
800, is that
Let's
right?
Turn around and sell it to
Something like that. 800.
Syria.
By the time it made it to England, it was $2,000.
200. Okay.
Okay,
All right, we're getting
season
greedy
your
now.
food,
Jack up
preserve some
200.
meat, pepper.
Syria
$2,000,
sells it to
$800,
the
$400.
Italians. What are you gonna sell it for? You bought
By
it
the
for
time it gets
200.
to Europe, it's just for the
250?
elites.
Not greedy.
It's
All right,
just
the
for the
Italians get
wealthy
deal.
nobility.
250
Normal people
bucks.
can't have
The
spices
Venetians show up
or
on the
silk
coast of
or
Syria.
porcelain or stuff like
They're
that.
gonna sell it
Okay?
to the French.
What did I buy it for
They
originally?
bought it for $250. What do you
$10.
sell it for?
Okay, that sounds more reasonable. Why is the
500
price so
even.
high?
The French got some
All
pepper
the
for their
middlemen
fancy
each
French
time
cuisine.
need to make a
Finally,
profit. And it's changing
cost
hands
them
every
500
time
bucks.
across the
They're gonna sell it
Silk
to their
Road. By
cousins
the
in
time it
England.
gets there, it's
How much?
worth an arm and a leg.
2,000.
The
That's
Italians
crazy.
are taking
$2,000.
advantage of the
Sold.
Silk Road
All right,
because
so that
everybody
pepper
in
shaker, right, that's what we
Europe
bought.
has to go to the
By the time it makes
Italians.
its way to
get it.
France was
They don't have any trade access to the Middle East. Are you with me?
like that. 800.
Italy's making
By the time
fistloads
it
of
made
money
to
off
England
of
was
it.
$2,000.
If you are Portugal or
Okay,
Spain,
season your food, preserve some
paying
pepper.
$3,000, $2,000 for pepper,
It by the time
Where
it
do
gets
you
to
wanna
Europe,
go?
it's just for the elites. It's just for the wealthy nobility.
idea?
Normal people can't have spices.
paying $2,000 to the French, you were paying $800 to the Italians,
Okay.
$400 to the Italians, something like
What did I
that.
buy it for originally?
What's a better business model?
$10. Okay, that sounds more reasonable.
Yeah, go get it for 10
Why is
bucks.
the price so high?
Go get it from 10 bucks at the source.
All
then come
the
back.
middlemen each time need to make a profit.
Italians sold it for
Changing hands every time
400.
across the
You
Silk
bought it
Road.
for
By the time
10.
it gets there,
What are you going to
it's
sell it for?
worth an arm and a leg. The Italians are taking advantage of
How do you
the Silk
undercut the
Road
Italians?
because everybody in Europe has
Less
to
than
go
the
to
Italians,
the Italians
$3.99.
to get it. They don't have any trade access to the Middle East.
The Italians can't lower their
Italy's
price
making
lower
fistloads
because they
of money
paid that
off
much
it.
to get it.
If
Because all the
you are
middlemen.
Portugal,
Well, yeah,
or
you're not
Spain,
making as much as they used to be making,
paying
but you bought it for $10 and you're selling it for
$2,000
$3.99.
for pepper,
You're making plenty of
where
money.
do you want to go?
Your problem is that's on the other side of the world. You don't know how to get there. So you might gamble some money on Columbus's plan to sail west. This sounds like a gross exaggeration. We're getting to the age of exploration. It sounds like a gross exaggeration in price. It's not.
Yeah, go get it for
The
10
first
bucks.
Portuguese explorer to make it
Get it
to
for
India
10
comes
bucks
back
at the
with a
source.
boatload of pepper. He fills
come
his
back.
ship up with spices.
400.
And his cargo is worth 60 times the cost of the voyage.
You're gonna sell it for-
Not 6 times, 60 times the cost of the voyage. We would have a colony on Mars in 3 years
$3.99.
if when we got there and came back, it was worth 60 times the money we had
The
invested.
Italians can't lower their price lower because they paid
If
that
it
much
cost
to
$1
get it.
million to outfit a ship and a crew for
Well, yeah,
a
you're
year to
not
get to
making as much
India
as they
and
used to
back,
be
when they
making.
got back, the pepper in their cargo hold is worth $60 million.
You're making plenty of money. Your problem is
All of
it's
this
such a-
trade, thriving on the Pax Mongolica, is benefiting the Italians before we get to the age of exploration. I kind of went a little far with the whole
This
age
sounds
of
like a
exploration
gross
thing.
exaggeration.
Right now, the Italians, Pax
Sounds like a gross
Mongolica,
exaggeration.
international
It's
trade,
not.
cities like Venice,
The first
Florence,
Portuguese explorer
Genoa,
to make it to India comes
tons of
back
money
with a
rolling
boatload of
in,
pepper.
bankers, merchants.
His ship up with spices. And
Questions?
his cargo is worth 60
Good.
times the cost of the voyage.
Got it. Where's my pepper shaker?
That's 60 times the cost of the voyage. We would have.
I didn't think you were gonna
Mars
spin it.
3 years. If when we got there and came back,
Um,
it was worth 60 times the money we had invested.
Marco Polo.
If it cost $1 million,
I don't know why
to
people
outfit
get
a
in
ship
pools
a crew
and
for
yell
a year
Marco
to get to India
Polo.
and back, when they got
But
back, the pepper in their cargo.
Marco
hold was
Polo
worth
is a Venetian
60
merchant
million.
that travels the Silk Road all the way to China.
All of this trade,
And he
thriving
meets
on the Pax
Kublai Khan,
Mongolica
and he
is
serves in
benefiting the
Kublai
Italians
Khan's
before we get
court,
to the age of exploration.
comes back, writes a book about how awesome China is,
Right now, the Italians,
and that
Pax
really
Mongolica,
inspires the other
international
Europeans to
trade,
get in their boats and
cities like
figure out
Venice,
a sea route
Florence, Genoa,
to Asia.
tons of
So
money
here's your
rolling in,
favorite guy,
bankers, merchants.
rocking out to Marco Polo.
Questions? Good. Got it. Where's my pepper shaker?
Well, we're gonna start off by going all the way back to the Middle Ages and the story of Marco Polo. It goes like this. For thousands
Marco
of years,
Polo.
trading routes had developed.
I don't know why
We call
people
it
get
the Silk Road, 2,000 wide. But when Romans
But
moved Europe and Mongols
Marco
moved China,
Polo is a
neither one
Venetian
still knew
merchant
much of the opposite
that travels
side.
the
Marco
Silk
Polo
Road
was born in the
all
city
over
of Venice.
He
In
meets Kublai Khan
1254,
and
a rich
serves
merchant
Kublai
and
Khan.
son, when Marco was
Back
little,
to
his father and uncle
China
went
is-
trading much further than most men had done. The brothers came home after 9 years of travels. They told Marco the wondrous places they'd done. They They plan to go back to trade more goods and knowledge with their new friends, the local Mongol Emperor Kublai. So Marco went with them back east on their mission. When the journey began, he was just 17. Persia, past mountains and the vast Gobi Desert, he saw things that few Europeans had seen. When 3 years had passed, they had made it to China. For thousands of years, trading with the president brought. The Khan was impressed with this young man named Marco, and the Germans treated like a legend. No one still knew Marco was shocked. They used paper from and coal, which he thought was a rock that could burn. Khan's first service was also a good, and Marco would tell Yerevan when trade turned for 17 years through the end of Brother Marco had many jobs straight from the emperor himself. For the times required old and the hopeless to go away. The next time might not let them with their new friend. Finally, they got permission to go with them. It was a hard journey, both by land and by sail. Home in Venice, Marco joined a war that passed blood. Got captured and spent a year in jail. Marco met Rustichello. He heard Marco's stories and wrote them all down. This book became famous and read across Europe. Peter just the hand copy and the full although they loved it, few people shocked it. Some called it the millions or one million lies. It is likely that Rustichello's service was also inserted or altered some stories and lies. All true or not, for 17 years through the third year after wonder any jobs straight for the emperor. All true or not, but the concrete much later matters. Now the Marco said, despite people's doubts, it is by God's permission, and others who journey for knowledge and gold. Marco himself never met Marco again, but to the end he still swore he got captured and told the year in jail. In jail, Marco met Rustichello, a writer. He heard Marco's stories and wrote them all down. This book became famous
Finally
and read across Europe.
get a coloring book, Jackson City Park, ukulele,
Although
squad
they loved
goals.
it, few people believed it. Some called it the millions or one
on, guys.
wise. It is likely that Rustichello or others inserted or altered some stories.
Hanseatic League and cities rising along with the merchant class here. So, did you write this down already?
All true or not,
Okay.
often much later
So, Hanseatic
found
League.
proof of the Marco said long before. Despite people's doubts, it inspired Columbus and others who journeyed for knowledge or gold.
Okay, so Silk Road coming in, back to Mongolica, through the Middle East, Ottoman Turks, Istanbul. Got the Venetian Republic, Genoa, Milan, Florence, Rome, Naples, especially northern Italian city-states thriving on trade with the Middle East. You can see Venice connecting with Constantinople, with the Levant, Beirut, Antioch. You can see Genoa, Constantinople, Tunis, Spain. They're both also
Hanseatic
trading
League
into France,
and,
as far as the Netherlands and England. Filthy rich off these luxury goods at the end of the Silk
So
Road.
Hanseatic League.
Northern Europe is also economically developing and seeing bigger cities grow. Off of a trade
so
network
Silk
called
Road
the Hanseatic
coming
League.
in,
So the Hanseatic
back to Mongolica,
League
through the Middle
are
East,
city-states like London,
Ottoman
and
Turks,
Bruges,
Istanbul,
Copenhagen,
the Venetian Republic,
Königsberg,
Genoa, Milan,
in
Florence,
Scandinavia,
Rome,
Germany, Poland,
Naples,
England,
especially
traveling the
northern
Baltic Sea
Italian
and the North Sea.
city-states
Now, they're
thriving
not.
on
It's not as
trade
lucrative
with
as the
Middle East. You can see
Mediterranean
Venice
trade.
connecting with Constantinople.
And it's not all these luxury
with
goods. It
Levant,
tends to be more
Beirut,
raw materials like
Antioch,
lumber, dried fish,
You can see Genoa,
wool,
Constantinople,
some manufactured
Tunis,
textiles.
Spain. They're
but
both also trading into France.
as cities and
as
trade
far as
grows
the
in
Netherlands,
southern Europe,
England,
aka northern
filthy
Italy,
rich off
that
these luxury
echoes
goods
for the rest of
at the end
northern
Silk
Europe, and we
Road.
see that in the Hanseatic League. Again, a
Northern
trade
Europe is
confederation of
also
Northern Europe.
economically developing and seeing bigger cities grow.
It's a powered loom. Textiles.
Off of a trade
I'm
network
gonna
called the
skip these
Hanseatic
textile
Leagues.
clips.
The Hanseatic League are city-states like London and Bruges, Copenhagen.
Textiles are one of the most
Königsberg.
lucrative trade goods, both in the Mediterranean
Scandinavia,
and
Germany,
Northern Europe.
Poland, England.
You guys have learned about the Industrial Revolution
Traveling the
before in the
Baltic Sea and North
1700s.
Sea. Now,
and it
they're
kind of
not,
begins
it's
with
not as
textiles
lucrative
and the
as the
cotton gin
Mediterranean
and all that stuff.
trade.
Um,
And it's not
The
always
Renaissance
luxury goods.
also
It
is
tends
kind
to
of
be more
thriving
raw
on
materials like lumber, dried fish,
textiles. It's
wool,
not.
some manufactured textiles.
It's not a
But
full industrial revolution. It's more kind of
As
hand-spun,
cities
hand-powered
and trade
looms.
grows in southern
But
Europe,
they're
aka
producing a lot of
northern
fabric
Italy,
and trading it both
that
in the north and
echoes
the
for
south.
the rest of northern Europe, and we see that in the Hanseatic.
Okay, here's an important part. Economically, politically, cities are on the rise. Cities are not necessarily plugged into the
Powered loom
feudal system.
textiles.
The feudal system was largely applied to the countryside, to the counties, to the duchies, to the rural areas. Cities
Textiles are one of
often
the
are
most
exempt
lucrative trade goods
from rule by
both in the
nobility.
Mediterranean and Northern
And
Europe.
within the cities, as
You guys
they
learned about
grow,
the
the
Industrial
merchants,
Revolution before in
the
1700s
bankers,
and it
the
had to do with
craftsmen,
textiles,
the business
cotton
people
and all that
are
stuff.
becoming more and more and more wealthy
Renaissance
and
also
more
is kind
and
of
more
thriving
and more
on
powerful. With wealth comes power.
Textiles.
And over
It's
time in the
not-
Renaissance, power begins to shift away
It's not
from
a
the
full
feudal
industrial
knights
revolution, it's more
and
kind of
dukes
hand-spun,
and counts
hand-powered looms.
protecting you from
But
Vikings
they're producing a
and
lot of
constantly
fabric
fighting
and
with
trading
one
it both
another.
in the north and the
Instead,
south.
power is shifting to the merchants,
Okay, here's an
to the
important part.
traders,
Economically,
to the
politically,
bankers,
cities are on
giving
the rise.
loans,
Cities are
to
not
corporations,
necessarily
to
plugged into
explorers,
the
to
feudal system.
manufacturers,
Feudal system was
to
largely
producers, to
applied
traders.
to
You don't get a
the
modern
countryside,
economy
to the counties, to the
without
duchies,
a basic
to
level
the
of
rural
banking and
areas.
finance and
Cities,
borrowing.
often
um,
are exempt from
and
rule
all
by
that stuff.
nobility. And within the cities, as
Questions?
they grow, the
You
merchants,
see that shift in wealth
the
and power,
bankers, the craftsmen, the business
moving from
people
exploiting the
are
peasants in the
becoming
rural
more and
countryside in
more
exchange for
wealthy
military protection
and more
to
more powerful.
merchants
With wealth comes
and
power,
businessmen
over
and
time
bankers
in
in
the
the
Renaissance,
cities.
power begins
And
to
increasingly
shift away
people are flooding
from
to the
the
cities or
feudal
moving to the
knights
cities
and dukes
for
and
work,
counts,
drawn to the
protecting you
wealth
from Vikings,
of the merchants and the
constantly fighting
bankers.
with one another.
We also see the growing
Instead,
power of
power
guilds.
is shifting
Guilds are
to
kind
the
of hard to
merchants,
explain. They're
to the traders, to the
they're
bankers, giving
skilled
loans,
craftsmen
to
that work together to
corporations,
train
to
each other and
explorers,
bargain
to
collectively.
manufacturers,
So
to
a
producers,
Mason's
to traders.
guild
You don't get a
are
modern
people that are
economy
stonecutters,
without
and they
a
would
basic
train
level of
a
banking,
apprentice
finance, and
to be a
borrowing.
journeyman, who would then advance to being a master mason,
stuff.
who would then get their own apprentice and train those people up.
See that shift in
They
wealth
can
and
also
power.
kind of try to negotiate as a group
Moving from
for
exploiting
higher
peasants in the
wages
rural countryside
and better
to
treatment.
military
Today, the
protection,
closest analogy would be to like a modern union,
merchants,
like the carpenters union or the pipe fitters
businessmen,
union or the
bankers,
electricians union.
increasingly
A guild is not the
people
exact same thing as a
cities-
union, but
cities
guilds in the Renaissance
work,
are skilled craftsmen.
drawn to the wealth of the merchants and the
We
bankers.
saw this in the
We also
documentary,
see the growing power of
Renaissances.
Guilds are kind of hard to explain. They're
Skilled.
They're
How do you get a skill?
skilled craftsmen that work together to train
There's
each
two
other
ways you
and
can
bargain
acquire a
collectively.
skill.
So, a Mason's guild are people that are stonecutters, and they would train
There's the easy
a
way, there's the hard way.
apprentice to be a
Both
journeyman, who would then advance to being a master mason, who would
Okay,
then get their own
education.
apprentice, and
So
and
you can-
train
that's the
those
easy
people
way.
up. They can also kind
Or
of
you can
try
learn it
to
yourself
negotiate
through-
as a group for higher wages.
Yeah, experience.
and better
Okay, so I can pick up a
treatment.
skill
Today,
one
the
of two
closest
ways. I can
analogy
either
would be
have
like
somebody
a
tell
union,
me how to do the
like
skill,
carpenters
and they can
union,
teach me,
pipefitters
and I can
union,
learn it that way.
electricians union.
Or I can just do it enough times to where eventually I pick it up from experience.
Guilds
That's
in
the hard way.
Renaissance are skilled craftsmen.
Both are valuable. Sometimes learning it by experience helps and makes it
We
stick a
saw
little
this
better.
in the documentary.
Learning it just academically sometimes isn't quite as thorough, or vice versa.
Skill.
Sometimes learning it the hard way, you don't ever
Skill.
actually quite figure it out the way somebody can explain it to you. But that's a skill.
Acquire a skill.
The key in that is often education. Most people in a modern economy in the United States in 2020, most people make a living in what's called the service sector, meaning they provide a service to
Education?
one another.
So you could, that's the
Case
easy
in point,
way.
I produce nothing.
Or you can
I
learn it
grow
yourself
nothing.
through.
I mine nothing. I chop
Yeah,
nothing. I
experience.
harvest nothing.
Okay,
I
so I can pick up a
manufacture
skill
nothing.
one of two ways.
I
can either have
produce
somebody
no
tell me how to
tangible
do the skill,
objects
and they can
whatsoever,
teach me, and I can
Yet
learn it
somehow
that
I make a
way.
living to support myself and my
Or
family.
I can just do it enough
How do I
times
do
to where
that?
eventually I pick it up from experience. That's the hard way.
I sell
Both
my
are valuable.
expertise.
Sometimes learning it by experience.
I
helps
provide
you
a
make it
service.
better. Learning
I
it just
sell
academically sometimes isn't
to a
quite
local
as
government,
thorough,
aka
or
the
vice
school
versa.
district,
Sometimes learning it the
my
hard way, you don't
expertise
ever
in
actually
history,
figure it out the way
and I teach you about the
No.
Renaissance in
But that's a
exchange
skill.
for money.
The key
That's
in that is often
the service
education.
sector.
Most
Most
people in
Americans,
modern
like
economy,
80% of
United
Americans,
States in
make a living in the
2020,
service sector.
Most people make a living.
A doctor
in what's called the
produces,
service
manufactures nothing.
sector, meaning
They provide their
service to one
expertise
another.
and service.
Case
Most
in
of it
point, I
learned through
produce
education, some of it through experience.
I grow nothing.
Electricians,
I mine
plumbers,
nothing.
carpenters.
I chop nothing. I harvest nothing. I
Most
manufacture
people
nothing.
make a
I
living
produce
providing
no
a service.
tangible objects whatsoever.
We start to see that developing
Yet somehow I
in the
make a
early
living to
Renaissance,
support
where
myself
people are
and my
picking
family.
up skills,
How do I do that?
and other people who have money are
I sell
supporting
my
them,
expertise.
financing them, paying
I
them
provide a
for their
service.
skills. Da Vinci,
sell
Michelangelo, Raphael,
government
all these artists and
school
architects and
district.
science and whatnot, they
My
needed to get
expertise in
paid,
history,
otherwise they
And
couldn't
I
eat.
teach you about the
And you
Renaissance
need
in
merchants
exchange
and
for
bankers
money.
like the Medici
That's
to be able to
service.
pay these
Most
skilled
Americans,
craftsmen,
80%
these
of
skilled
Americans
artists,
make
these
a
skilled
living in the service
architects
sector.
to produce all
A
this great
doctor
stuff.
produces,
Without
manufactures
trade,
nothing. They
Without
provide
bankers
their
and merchants who
expertise
are
and
wealthy,
service.
without
Most of it
cities,
learned through
you don't get
education,
any of the
some of it through
Renaissance
experience.
art and architecture and philosophy and
Electricians,
mathematics and
plumbers,
literature
carpenters.
and studies of anatomy or any
Most
of the
people
stuff. You gotta have
living
wealthy
providing
businessmen
a service.
patronizing,
We
paying
start to
for
see that developing
that stuff,
in the early
investing in it.
Renaissance, where people are picking up
Cool.
skills, and other people who
Okay,
have money
long class period, lots of
are
lecture.
supporting them,
No
financing
questions?
them, paying them for their skills.
I think we're gonna pack it in.
Da
We'll
Vinci,
pick up there tomorrow.
Michelangelo, Raphael, all these artists.
turn
and
this thing
architects
off
and
now.
whatnot, they needed to get paid, otherwise they couldn't eat.